You fall asleep on an inflatable mattress in calm water, 10 meters from the beach. You wake up 2 hours later. There is no beach. There is no shore. There is only water, in every direction, as far as you can see. This isn't a nightmare. It happens to real people, on real vacations, almost every single summer. And most of them had no idea the ocean could do this quietly, without a single wave. Today, we're covering 6 situations that turn a normal day at the beach into a fight for your life. Drifting out to sea on an inflatable, being pulled out by the tide, the exact time swimming becomes genuinely dangerous. How to actually read the tide before you get in the water. The rip current that kills more people than sharks ever will, and the other currents nobody warns you about. This is Earth Survival Guide. Let's talk about the ocean's favorite trick, moving you without you ever feeling like you moved. Scenario 1. Asleep on the water. Here's the part almost nobody understands about drifting. You don't need big waves, and you don't need a storm. A steady offshore wind of just 15 to 20 kilometers per hour, combined with the wind resistance of your body and the mattress acting like a sail, can move you 30, 50, even 100 meters every few minutes. Silently, with almost no sensation of motion at all. By the time you wake up, sunburned, disoriented, and thirsty, you could already be a kilometer or more from shore, and the beach you were floating near an hour ago now looks like a thin line on the horizon, if you can see it at all. The first mistake almost everyone makes, panicking and immediately trying to swim straight back, as hard as possible. That burns your energy fast, and panic makes you swallow water, which makes everything worse. The correct first move is to stay on the mattress. It's flotation you already have, and it costs you 0 energy. Sit up if you can, and look for the shoreline, boats or buoys, anything that gives you a fixed reference point, because water has none. Then check the wind and current direction, using ripples on the water's surface, or the direction you're drifting. If the wind is blowing you further out, paddle at an angle across the wind, not directly against it. Fighting wind and current head-on is a losing battle you don't need to fight. Wave both arms overhead in slow, wide motions. That's the internationally recognized distress signal, far more visible than shouting, which barely carries over open water and wind. And here's the detail that saves lives before any of this even happens. Check the wind direction before you get on an inflatable. If the wind is blowing offshore, from land toward the sea, an inflatable mattress is one of the most dangerous objects you can bring into the water. Scenario 2. Pulled out by the tide. This one is quieter and in some ways more dangerous because you're not floating on anything. You're standing, waiting, walking a sandbar that was dry 20 minutes ago, and the water around your ankles has become water around your waist. Tides don't come in like a wave. They come in like a slowly filling bathtub, and on flat beaches, that slow fill can outrun a walking adult, especially across sandbars and tidal flats, where the incoming water surrounds you from multiple sides at once, cutting off your path back before you even notice the sand disappearing. If you feel the water rising faster than expected, don't wait to see how it develops. Move toward the nearest high ground or the mainland shoreline immediately, at an angle that keeps the shortest possible distance to dry land, not necessarily back the way you came. If the water is already chest deep and moving, stop fighting directly against the current. Move diagonally with it, conserving energy, aiming for the closest fixed point of land rather than a straight line back to where you started. This is exactly the mistake that catches beachgoers on tidal flats and sandbar islands worldwide. Not big dramatic waves, just water quietly doing what tides have done twice a day for millions of years. Which brings us to the question almost nobody asks before they go swimming. The most dangerous times to swim. When is it actually most dangerous to swim in the sea? Three windows matter more than any other factor combined. First, low tide, and the hour on either side of it. This is when rip currents are statistically most likely to form and strengthen, because the largest volume of water is draining back through the smallest channels in the sandbar. Second, right after a storm, even a distant one. Storms generate powerful swells that travel for hundreds of kilometers and arrive at a beach under a perfectly sunny, calm-looking sky, which is exactly why so many rip current drownings happen on the nicest-looking beach days of the year. Third, early morning and dusk. Not because the water itself is more dangerous, but because lifeguards usually aren't on duty yet, and visibility for spotting a struggling swimmer drops fast as the light fades. None of these windows look dangerous. That's exactly the problem. The ocean gives you almost no visual warning before it changes the rules. So how do you actually know if it's low tide or high tide right now before you even touch the water? How to read the tide. The fastest method: check a tide table for your exact beach before you leave the house. Every coastal region publishes one, usually as a free app or website, showing the exact hour of high tide and low tide for that day. No signal, no app. Read the sand itself. A wide band of darker, damp, compacted sand below the dry sand line shows you where the water reached at the last high tide. If you're standing well below that line, the tide is currently out, and it may be coming back in. Look for debris lines, seaweed, shells, and foam left in a curved line along the beach. This marks the previous high tide's reach, and it's one of the most reliable natural indicators there is. Watch a fixed object at the waterline, like a rock or a post, for 10 to 15 minutes. If the water is visibly climbing higher up that object, the tide is coming in. If it's receding, the tide is going out. And that's your cue that rip currents may be intensifying. Now let's talk about the current responsible for more ocean deaths than almost anything else on this list. The rip current. A rip current is not a whirlpool, and it does not pull you underwater, despite what almost every panicked survivor initially believes in the moment. It's a narrow river of water flowing directly away from the beach, formed when water piled up by breaking waves finds the fastest path back out to sea, usually through a gap or channel in a sandbar. And it is fast. Rip currents have been measured moving at speeds up to 2.4 meters per second, faster than an Olympic swimmer's top sprint speed. You cannot outswim it heading straight back to shore. Nobody can. Here's how to spot one before you're in it. Look for a channel of choppy, discolored, or sediment-filled water cutting through the surf. Look for a gap where waves aren't breaking the way they are on either side of it. Look for foam, seaweed, or debris moving steadily out to sea in a straight line. If you're caught in one, the official guidance has actually just been updated, and it matters. The old advice was simple: swim parallel to the shore until you're free of the current. That's still correct, but if you're getting tired doing it, the newest guidance says stop fighting entirely. Flip onto your back. Float. Let the current carry you. It will not pull you under, and it will not carry you to Australia. Rip currents typically weaken and dissipate a short distance offshore, often just beyond the breaking waves. Once you feel the pull ease, swim perpendicular to the direction the current was pulling you, essentially sideways like crossing a river, and only then angle back toward the beach. If you can't make progress at all, don't panic and don't waste your remaining energy. Float, wave one arm overhead, and call for help. Lifeguards rescue an estimated 30,000 people from rip currents every year in the United States alone. Being rescued is not a failure. It's the system working exactly as intended. One more critical rule. If you see someone else struggling in a rip current, do not swim out to grab them without flotation. A disturbing number of rip current drownings are actually the would-be rescuer, not the original swimmer. Throw something that floats and get a lifeguard immediately. Rip currents cause an estimated 100 deaths a year in the United States alone, more than sharks, more than lightning strikes on beaches, more than almost any other coastal hazard combined. And rip currents aren't the only current out there working against you. The other dangerous currents. The undertow is the current most people confuse with a rip current, but it's a completely different mechanism. It's the backward pull you feel at your ankles as a wave retreats back down the sloped sand beneath you. It's usually mild, but on steep beaches after large waves, it can be strong enough to knock a person off their feet directly into the next incoming wave. The longshore current runs parallel to the beach instead of straight out to sea. It won't drag you into open water, but it can carry you hundreds of meters down the coastline in a matter of minutes, which is exactly how people end up lost, disoriented, and searching for a beach umbrella that's no longer anywhere near where they are. Tidal currents form in narrow passages, inlets, channels, and the water around piers, jetties, and bridge pilings, where a large volume of water is forced through a small gap as the tide changes. These can run surprisingly fast, and they're especially dangerous because they're often right next to the structures people think are the safest place to swim near. The common thread through every single one of these: the ocean rarely announces what it's doing. It just does it, quietly, while you're focused on the horizon instead of the water moving under your feet. So, here's the entire ocean survival strategy in one sentence. Check the wind and tide before you get in the water. Know which current you're dealing with before you decide how to respond. And when in doubt, float first, swim second. Every scenario we just covered deserves a deeper breakdown of its own. What it actually feels like to wake up alone in open water, exactly how tidal flats trap people who thought they had plenty of time, and a full survival breakdown of the rip current specifically, with real cases of people who got it right and people who didn't. Those episodes are coming. And there's one more story that belongs in this series, unlike any of the others, because it isn't about someone who accidentally ended up in the open ocean. It's about a man who jumped into it on purpose. In December of 1974, a Soviet oceanographer climbed to the stern of a cruise liner in the middle of the Philippine Sea, in a storm, at night, and jumped. What happened over the next 3 days and 2 nights, alone, with no boat and no rescue coming, is one of the most extraordinary survival stories of the 20th century. That's a full episode on its own, and it's coming soon. The ocean doesn't need a storm to be dangerous. Most of the time, it's dangerous on the calmest, sunniest, most beautiful day of the year, which is exactly why so few people see it coming. Scene 55. Now you know what to check before you get in, and what to do the moment things change. Scene 56. If this episode just changed how you look at the water, subscribe to Earth Survival Guide, hit the bell, and join us for the deep dives coming next, because the world can change in seconds, and next time it might be the current under your feet. Stay prepared, stay aware, survive.